This was a scene with 2 minutes left. Look at that. It's like they have stepped in and they have snatched out Caitlin Clark, hell, and Lexi Hull's soul.
How do you summarize kind of what you saw out there?
I was disappointed because I felt like there was a lack of competitive fire. With the exception of about 2 5-minute spurts, our attention to detail was poor. I'm not sure if it's not knowing the game plan as much as, because if it's not knowing the game plan, then that's a whole nother conversation, as much as not executing the game plan.
How do you lose this badly at home with your star player returning from injury? The Indiana Fever didn't just get beat, they got embarrassed. An 80-61 blowout on their own floor, while Caitlin Clark suited up and returned to action. You'd think that would spark something, but this team didn't just lack energy, they looked completely checked out. No chemistry, no urgency, no fight.
And the worst part about all of this took place on camp day. This took place on camp. You have campers in the upper deck. Go, Caitlin, go. Go, Caitlin. They didn't deserve it.
Before we expose what really happened, make sure you're subscribed. This channel doesn't hold back.
We're just saying, Stephanie White doesn't like Caitlin Clark, the way she plays. Listen to what she said about Luca. Look what she said about Luca. And I just didn't really see anything. And I'm like, I watched Robin's video and he read it out. And I'm like, or not read it out, like brought it up. And like, it's...
The defense? Non-existent. The Valkyries ran circles around them like it was a warm-up drill. 2 separate 9-0 runs and another 12-1 run, all in the same game. How does that happen under a so-called defensive-minded coach? This wasn't just bad defense, it was offensive chaos too. Literally. The Fever shot an ugly 31% from the field. That's not cold, that's frozen. And the worst part? The few buckets they did get mostly came early. As the game went on, the shots got worse, and the energy flatlined.
Hi, I'm Stephanie White, head coach of the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark, and I'm a complete clown! I'm a clown! That is what I am as a head coach. I am a clown. I am ruining Caitlin Clark. I have no idea what I'm doing as a coach. I have no idea what I'm doing. I've been sent here on a mission to ruin Caitlin Clark and the Indiana.
You'd think a team stacked with shooters like Clark, Mitchell, and Hull would be able to score. But Stephanie White didn't run a single set to free them up. No screens, no ball movement, no identity. And what happened next would shock everyone. Caitlin Clark was positioned at small forward. Small forward. After an injury, instead of being the floor general, she was floating on the wing, while Ari McDonald ran the point. Make it make sense.
80-61, a 19-point defeat. This team was terrible shooting the ball.
Even Aaliyah Boston was benched for long stretches. Natasha Howard barely played. Star players were rotated out at random, while the Fever fell apart in front of their fan. You can't help but wonder, was this poor strategy or just no strategy at all? And then came the humiliation. The Valkyries, a West Coast team, tipped off this game at 9 a.m. their time, and still blew Indiana off the floor. They played harder, smarter, and more together. Their coach had them locked in. Meanwhile, the Fever looked like they didn't even know what time the game started. And now fans are asking the question no one thought we'd be hearing this soon.
Who do we think we are pushing the pace? Who do we think we are playing an up-tempo? We gotta slow this down. We gotta drag this out. We gotta grind it out. And then maybe somebody on the bench was like, but coach, we're up 2011 playing this way, coach. Why do we need to change it up? Just curious, coach. Well, because this is my system and my system goes.
Is Stephanie White the problem? The hype is fading fast. No system, no adjustments, no urgency. A team with this much talent shouldn't be this lost. But when you can't beat the bottom tier Sparks and follow it up by getting destroyed in a return game for your franchise player, people start demanding accountability. Even worse, the online chatter has already turned toxic. People are dragging her into comparisons with Angel Reese. Instead of celebrating talent, we're watching it be wasted, while the coaching staff fumbles every chance to build around it.
Hey, bro. No, I'm not doing that. Pack your bags right now. Stephanie White gotta go. You gotta go. You are a clown of a coach, a pure clown of a coach, bro. What are we talking about? What are we talking about?
This isn't about one loss. It's about a pattern. It's about a team that's not growing, not learning, and not competing when it matters. The Valkyries showed up to dominate. The Fever showed up to participate, and if something doesn't change fast, this could go from disappointing to disastrous. How do you have Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston and still have no offense? That's the real question fans are asking. Because this isn't just a talent issue, it's a coaching problem, and all signs are pointing straight at Stephanie White.
I guess, why do you think you had some of these inconsistencies when it comes to focus and engagement, things like that?
I'd say discipline more so than focus. I think this is a group that focuses, but you can focus, and then you have to be able to go out and be disciplined enough to execute it, right? I'm not sure. We're as coaches, that's our job to figure it out. Why it is. You've seen it in spurts, you've seen it in moments, you've seen it with certain lineups. So finding those lineups that we've seen it with consistently, and maybe keeping.
The Fever have two of the most dynamic young players in the league. One is a generational passer. The other is a dominant post player. Together, they could be unstoppable. And for a few games, they were. That two-woman game? It had defenders scrambling. Clark feeds the paint. Boston finishes strong. Simple. Effective. But now, it's vanished. And that's not an accident. Stephanie White seems lost. Game after game, there's no structure, no rhythm, no identity. You've got shooters running around with no screens. You've got Caitlin Clark standing in the corner like a decoy. Meanwhile, the offense breaks down into wild, off-balance shots and wasted possessions.
Because she was busy standing in that corner and standing in that corner and being used as a decoy here and being used as a decoy there and screening and cutting away here and screening and cutting away there. Oh, 0 Caitlin Clark points in the second quarter.
It's not just bad, it's confusing. This isn't a team lacking talent. It's a team lacking leadership. White hasn't just failed to build a system, she's ignored the very formula that actually worked. Why ditch the only offensive spark you had? Why move Clark off the ball when she's the only one who can create it? But it gets worse. Out of timeouts, nothing. No set plays, no backdoor cuts, no designed screens to get hot shooters open. Just isolation, hesitation, and confusion. Fans watching from home can see it. Analysts are calling it out. And yet, game after game, it's the same nonsense, slow starts, poor spacing, and no direction.
You see the Mavs just play differently without Luka on the floor. When he's not on the floor, that ball is moving, it's popping, multiple players getting involved in the action, blah, blah, blah. The post also includes a quote from Mavs radio announcer, lower usage rate from this year. White further commented that Doncic is a player with a high usage rate, keeping the ball in his hands, and that when he's not playing, the ball movement increases with more players participating in stepping.
The players are starting to look frustrated. You can see it in their body language. Clark is rushing shots. Boston isn't getting touches. Even veterans like Kelsey Mitchell seem unsure of their role. That's not a team issue. That's coaching. You don't waste 2 number 1 draft picks by figuring it out on the fly. You build around them. You give them tools. You set them up for success. Stephanie White is doing the opposite, and the results speak for themselves. And now, the backlash is building.
Best point guard in the world, and you have her playing small forward. You got her playing small forward, bro. What are we talking about here? This is like Mike D'Antoni having this 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns and saying, hey, Steve Nash, go stand in a corner. We want Quentin Richardson to bring the ball up. Man, get the fuck up out of here, man. This is trash.
Fans aren't just upset. They feel betrayed. This team was supposed to turn a corner. Instead, it's falling apart. And people are done making excuses. Give it time only works when you see progress. This is regression. Stephanie White may have had the support early on, but the clock is ticking. You get this. The Indiana Fever didn't just lose, they collapsed. Multiple times. In one game. Not once, not twice, but 3 separate runs, 9-0, 9-0, and 12-1. That's not just bad defense, that's a team falling apart right in front of our eyes. And it all points back to one thing, 0 preparation. From the first quarter on, the Valkyries ran the same plays, simple pick-and-rolls, basic motion cuts, and the Fever had no answer. Not one adjustment, not one rotation that made a difference. Players looked confused. Communication? Gone. Help defense? Non-existent. They weren't even facing elite shooters. The Valkyries weren't raining threes. They were just outworking, outsmarting, and out-hustling Indiana. It was like watching a varsity team scrimmage a junior squad. The Fever couldn't close out, couldn't recover, and honestly, they didn't even look interested in trying. And it showed in every possession.
The Dallas Mavericks are not better without Luka Doncic. They're not better without Luka Doncic. We can be honest, they're not better without Luka. The ball moving point was brought up by Carolyn Peck after the cup win again. Man, they barely scored the ball in the cup win. They literally, what are people talking about ball movement? They won because Natasha Howard hit circus shots. What are we talking about? Natasha Howard hit circuit shots and the Lynx couldn't hit a shot. And then their defense imploded because they couldn't hit a shot late in the game. The Lynx shit the bed and Natasha Howard hit circus shots.
Nobody rotated on defense. No one stepped up to stop the ball. Guards blew past them. Bigs got bullied in the paint. It was lazy, disconnected, and flat out embarrassing. For a team with supposedly defensive-minded coaching, this was a meltdown of epic proportions. And what happened next would leave fans furious. Even after those massive runs, there was no urgency, no timeouts to stop momentum, no lineup changes that made a difference, no leadership from the bench. It was as if the coaching staff just sat back and watched the team drown. And Caitlin Clark? You could see it on her face, frustration, exhaustion. A player who's used to competing, suddenly stuck in a system that doesn't fight back, that doesn't defend, that doesn't care. And now, the hard truth can't be ignored. Stephanie White's defense isn't just underperforming, it's non-existent. This wasn't one bad night. This was a pattern. A team that doesn't talk, doesn't rotate, doesn't defend the paint, and gives up the same exact run multiple times in the same game. You don't need a stat sheet to see what's wrong. You just need to watch for 5 minutes. And if this continues, the Fever won't just lose more games, they'll lose the locker room, the fans, and the faith in a rebuild that's already hanging by a thread. How do you get outworked by a team playing at 9 a.m. their time? Because that's exactly what happened. The Golden State Valkyries walked into this game at a massive disadvantage. Body clocks off, travel fatigue, an early morning tip-off that should have slowed them down. But instead, they looked more prepared, more focused, and more determined than the Indiana Fever, who had every advantage possible. And yet, they got cooked. From the first possession, it was obvious, the Valkyries came to compete. Every pass had purpose, every cut was sharp. They played together, moved the ball, rotated on defense, like a team that's been practicing execution, not just relying on hype. Meanwhile, the Fever looked like they rolled out of bed 5 minutes before tip. But here's the part that really exposes the problem. The Valkyries don't have the same big names. They don't have the spotlight, but they do have something Indiana clearly doesn't: structure. You can see it. You can feel it. Their coach has them bought in, locked in, and fully committed to team basketball. They aren't flashy. They're functional. And that's what wins games. And what happened next made it impossible to ignore. The Valkyries didn't just win, they outclassed the Fever in every phase. Defense, offense, hustle, energy, execution. It was a masterclass on how to show up and dominate without excuses. Even their star, Kayla Thornton, shot poorly, and they still beat Indiana by 19. Imagine what the score would have been if she'd been hot. And that leads us to the real embarrassment. If the Valkyries can play like that under those conditions, what's the Fever's excuse? A home crowd? A comfortable schedule? A star rookie returning? And they still couldn't show any fire? That doesn't fall on players, that falls on the coaching staff. Because at the end of the day, one team looked like they wanted it, the other looked like they didn't care. What kind of team shows up unprepared in front of their own fans during a game made for them to shine? Because that's exactly what the Indiana Fever did, and it was flat out embarrassing. This wasn't just a regular loss, it was a gutless display on a special stage. An 11 a.m. tip-off, a packed house, a home crowd full of kids, families, and first-time fans excited to see Caitlin Clark back in action. And the Fever? They looked like they had just rolled out of bed. No energy, no execution, no sense of urgency. They didn't just lose, they collapsed, slowly, painfully, and without a fight. They were late on rotations, slow on offense, and flat on effort. The Valkyries, who started the game at 9 a.m. their time, played harder. That alone should make every Fever fan furious. But it gets worse. The Fever had every reason to come out strong. Home court advantage, full rest, a bounce-back opportunity. Instead, they looked confused. The offense stalled. The defense folded. Even out of timeouts, there were no signs of a plan, no adjustments, no spark, nothing. And what happened next made it even more embarrassing. Caitlin Clark, supposedly the centerpiece of this franchise, was thrown into a broken lineup with no support. Aaliyah Boston sat for stretches that made no sense. Natasha Howard barely touched the floor. And the coach? Silent. Passive, watching as her team got picked apart in front of a crowd expecting fireworks and getting fumbled sparks. Let that sink in. This wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a moment where the Fever exposed themselves, not as a young team finding their way, but as a disorganized mess with no direction. The players looked disconnected. The bench had no answers, and the fans, left with nothing to cheer for. You don't recover from moments like this by brushing it off. You fix it. You hold people accountable. But if this game was any clue, no one on that sideline seems to feel the urgency, and that should scare everyone. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.